Coming up with the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, we look at the recent history of draft picks and why this year was so successful, and there's a metric to that. And also we look at the defensive line grades. Hint, it's probably fairly incomplete because of the spring game. We have to look in the fall to see how that goes. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Ole Miss podcast. I am your host, Stephen Willis, and thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. So go to YouTube, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the bell for notifications when we release a new video, and of course, upvote the video itself. We would appreciate it. Also, if we hit 1,000 subscribers before football season, which we are over 80% of the way there, but if we hit that, we're going to do a live post-game show that is going to be interactive, and we're going to talk a little bit about what we're seeing. I've got an Ole Miss legend that's committed. I've got a high school coach that is committed, and we are going to talk, and it's going to be different people every day. You don't know who's going to show up. We're trying to find a couple more ex-players to bring on the show and let them talk about it, but it should be a lot of fun, and I'm really looking forward to that. And this will be completely interactive. There will be a chat module, the whole 9 yards, and it'll be visible to all of your friends. So it should be a lot of fun. I hope everybody takes part of that. But first of all, tell a friend so he can subscribe to the YouTube channel so we can get that over 1,000. But if we get that over 1,000, it is here. Ole Miss is their defensive line. I think their defensive line is going to be something that's kind of an incomplete after spring. We don't know too much about it. Now, we do know that the talent is upgraded, as it has been most everywhere. If you look at it, 4- and 5-star players last season, there were 17 or 18 of them on the whole roster. 17 or 18 4- or 5-star players. Most of them likely was from that Mississippi-made class in 2019. But this roster has transitioned and changed to the point where this year you're looking at like 34-ish high school players that were 4-star and above on this roster. That is a transformation of the talent of this roster, and they've done a heck of a job. They just really have. And whenever that happens, the talent's going to jump up as well. But as I've said all the time, it is one thing to be talented, it is another thing to be good, and these guys have to learn to be good. But if you look at the defensive line, it's probably, there's no Sam Williams, right, on the defensive line. But as far as good players go, there's a chance that they're 3 deep at that position. Remember, we're a 3-2-6 base. So you need 9 essentially to be that. So J.J. Pegues is going to play that nose guard position. He can also play a 3 technique and a 4 down. So that is going to put that tool in our bag as well. Instead of a 3-3-5 look, we might have a 4-2-5 look, something like that. But he can do that. Katie Hill may jump. Cedric Johnson is quite good. Jared Ivey, quite good. Tawan Malone, he's probably due to make a step this season. As it goes on, Isaiah Iton, Jamon Gordon, Damon Clowney. It just goes on and on and on of good players that are playing on the defensive side of the ball. And it honestly got me a little bit thinking, does everybody remember what 2018 was like defensively? If you want to, that's what we'll do today. In the comments below, talk about how the 2018 defense made you feel. That is the question. Talk about how the 2018 defense made you feel, because it made me feel hopeless. Even though you had on the offensive side of the ball, Jordan Ta'amu was a great quarterback. A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf, DeMarcus Lodge was out making plays. Dawson Knox, and at running back you had Scotty Phillips. And all those guys and all those weapons on offense was basically rendered mute by how bad our defense was. How Taylor Polk was starting at linebacker, I think. Or that may have been 2017, but We had holes at linebacker. We had whole position groups that were inadequate. Defensive line was a joke. Linebackers was, hey, let's try and find somebody. I mean, we signed Momo Sanogo with the hopes that he would play, and he did not. And this defense got worse and worse and worse over the course. And the Texas A&M game, I believe that year, it's just like about in the third quarter, you just knew that something bad was going to happen and something wasn't going to be worth really looking at defensively, because there was no lead that we could keep. And that defense played fairly well that day, but there was no chance we were winning that game because of how bad we were defensively. Now, fast forward 4 years, one class, starting with that Mississippi-made 2019 class, because I am not going to bag on that. There are others that are going to bag because, Nakobe Dean went to Georgia, a player went to Alabama, a couple players went to Auburn. J.J. Pegues out of that class went to Auburn, and you had a chance to do something really special. The reason they called it and they did all of this Mississippi-made stuff is because we signed 2 players from the state of Mississippi in 2018. Because the NCAA did such a good job of drawing this out and others recruiting against us, we could not get players in our own state to come to Ole Miss. You know the 2 players we got that year? Tyler Knight and Quentin Bivens. Those were the 2 in the 2018 class. Now, that was the class where we got Elijah Moore and Matt Corral, and we were able to do some stuff outside of the state. But inside, where people just completely started harping on everything going on, we had trouble recruiting. There's a lot of defensive linemen in that cycle, and the defensive line was inadequate in 2018. It was inadequate in 2019. Was really inadequate in 2020, and last year it made strides and got good towards the end, but last year is the point where it kind of turned the corner a bit. And now you have essentially a 3 deep on the defensive side of the ball and the defensive line. So I'm going to grade this as I'm not going to use incomplete because I use that on wide receivers, but I'm going to use C. And that is nothing negative about the team. There's nothing positive as well. It is a wait and see grade. And this unit has a chance to be really good. It has to be a chance to be one of the bell cow units on the team. But I'm nervous to anoint it now. There's weapons all over the place. Like I said, there's one thing to be talented, it's quite another to be good. And we'll see how that goes. Summer is coming, and with summer, you're going to need some food to go. Built Bars are the perfect snack to take with you on your family vacations. Throw them in your bags, in your kids' backpacks. Make sure that everyone has a bar so that you're fueled for your summer adventure. The best part about Built Bars, they're healthy and delicious. No more sacrificing delicious food for health. With Built Bar, you can have both, and it's easy. All you have to do is go to Built.com and order now. So go to Built.com, get all your favorites, banana cream pie, raspberry, double chocolate, and so many more. They are all delicious, and new flavors are coming out all the time. Check them out at Built.com. So here's the offer. Go to Built.com. Use promo code LOCKED15, all one word, LOCKED15, and get 15% off your order. Use the promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. All right, thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. Do us a favor and rate and review us on iTunes. You can say whatever you want to say, just rate and review us. Give us 5 stars. That 5-star review is going to help others find the podcast, and it can grow. And it's a way of evangelizing to the masses. If you could go on there and rate us, I would appreciate it. And it should be a lot of fun. And remember, like we said in the first segment, get to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, live post-game show featuring Ole Miss legends, and we're trying to grow this. So it should be a lot of fun. Should be really great. Anyway, 6 players were drafted from Ole Miss last night, tying the record, which was in 2016. Now, what did 2016's draft and last night this weekend have in common? They were both Sugar Bowl teams. Now, the 2016 draft was very top-heavy. There was 3 Ole Miss players that went in the first round. This class was more bottom-heavy, but the same number of players went. Chance Campbell, Mark Robinson was even able to go. Dean Leonard went. Let's see, who else? Obviously Matt Corral, obviously Sam Williams, and who else went? Who am I missing? Well, we'll figure it out. Sorry about that. If I forgot you, it wasn't anything. Crew, it's a brain surgery moment. I have trouble with names from time to time. So, they did that. And you can see, Sugar Bowl team, highest number of draft picks. Now, that means either one or two things. Either the talent was better than we thought it was on this roster going into 2021. Or you need really, really good players to go to the Sugar Bowl. It means one of those two things. Either way, it means you have to be talented to do things that you want to do and things that you would deem successful. And Ole Miss lost that game to Baylor. Obviously, everybody remembers the Matt Corral injury and all of that. Luke Altmaier coming in, that was the first action that he received. But that draft, 6 players, will we break that record? I think we will in the coming years. If Lane Kiffin stays here, we will break that record. Now, if you look at last year's roster, like we said last segment, 16 or 17 players were 4 or 5-star high school players. This team is up around 34. We have completely transformed the roster. So, if the same rate of 4 and 5-star players are able to develop, Snoop Connor, he also went drafted. He was the 6th player. With that happening, this should go up. Now, the record's like 16 or 15 Georgia this year. And it was absolutely crazy to see in the draft that 5 Georgia players from that defense went in the first round, and not one of them was Nakobe Dean. That absolutely blew my mind. But they did. They're a good team. They have to turn it over, but the way that they recruit Georgia and Alabama, and to some extent LSU, and the way that Texas A&M recruits, and Tennessee, and probably Kentucky. Kentucky would probably go in there. So you got the Alabama and Georgia and LSU that was kind of like former power recruiters. You've got Texas A&M, Tennessee, and potentially Kentucky. They're NIL recruiters. They're another category. And then you have us, the transfer portal recruiter. So if we are successful, others are going to catch up. They're going to be a little bit behind us, but they're going to catch up. Now remember, this is the thing that people need to remember. Does everybody realize why Boise State was so good? Why did Boise State become a relevant football brand in the college football landscape? It wasn't because of talent. They were recruiting 2 stars, 3 stars. They'd have a good player every now and then, but not great. They invented tagged plays. So, depending on how you lined up, if they put a receiver out there that was uncovered or whatever they do, there was a tag to where they could throw a pass instead of a run. The same thing happened. They also kind of did a little bit of RPO stuff later on, but early on it was because of tag. That advent to the offense made them ahead of the game. Now, college football, if you come up with a really good idea and you are an early adopter, college football will reward you in spades. And Boise State became good because of this early thing. And while defenses tried to figure out what was going on and eventually caught up to what they were doing as they saw it more, because more people would go up to Boise, see what they did, and kind of incorporate that into their offense, Boise just kind of kept clicking. And now, eventually, everybody would be at that tagged level, and the 2 and 3 and 4-star recruits would be a little bit of trouble for the boys from the blue turf. And that's kind of where we got. But there was about a 10-year period where they were a fairly dominant football team. There's been years that they were knocking on the top 10. The year they beat Oklahoma in the Fiesta Bowl, I think they finished that year in the top 10, and it was because of tagged plays. Now, Statue of Liberties and everything else they can do, but these tagged, packaged plays that were run were the game changer for them. And they had such an advantage offensively that they were able to exploit while defense has caught up to it. Now, I say that to say this. The transfer portal is an early adoption move, and if it is really successful, teams that are similar to Ole Miss are going to copycat. Mississippi State will do that. You will see a situation where teams draft or sign 10 or 11 players and get 15 in the transfer portal. That'll become commonplace. You'll see G5s going up and grabbing second-string players. Southern Miss is doing that this year with Ole Miss and State. And this is probably going to make Southern Miss a little bit better. So whatever we do, if it works, people are going to copy it. Now, the trick will be to be the best version of ourselves. And we're trying to do that. We're trying to set a name for ourselves in what we're doing because of that. And it seems to be working, like 32, 33, 34, somewhere in there is the number of high school 4-stars or 5-stars on this Ole Miss roster. Last year it was around 17. It's almost doubled. So the transformation of talent on this roster is absolutely phenomenal. Now, I say that to say this. That 6 NFL draft thing that tied the program record, that tied the other Sugar Bowl team in 2016, I know that, I think that's going to be broken relatively soon because, I mean, there's too much talent on this roster for it honestly not to be. And people need to get ready for how that looks and what that means and what's going on there. All right, BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting stats and sports information. Find all the latest sports developments, league news, reviews, including this year's basketball playoffs and the start of the Major League Baseball season. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head over to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and actions. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available on all platforms. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel because we are going to do, if we hit 1,000 subscribers by football season, we are going to have a live post-game show that you can interact with. One of the persons that is kind of committed may or may not be on this phone call. I don't know, but we'll see what's going on. Anyway, Ole Miss legend, because he's a legend to me, Bill Flowers joining us. How you doing, Bill?
I'm doing great, thank you. If you see a little head behind me, that's my daughter, so I apologize.
Yeah, you're kind of frozen at the moment, but we can hear you just fine. So hopefully that clicks over. So maybe a risk of the cell phone, but we'll do that.
Yeah.
Did you see any of the Grove Bowl? Anything?
I did. I got to watch a good bit of it, and all these spring games are very much alike. Defense wins, and sometimes you get some good ground game, but especially with a new quarterbacks, you don't really expect to see too much offensive power just lighting up everything.
Yeah, I remember, and just see, Jackson Dart really struggled. Luke Altmaier actually looked okay. He did.
He looked better, but I mean, it's one of those things where you can't even think about, oh my gosh, like if he came out and he was just light, just head and shoulders above everybody else, then you're thinking, wow. But in reality, we all knew that Luke Altmaier is a good player, and you're not going to just come in with zero experience in this team and just come in and just start throwing darts right and left and touchdowns here and there. So that's all to be expected.
Yeah, and sometimes the fan base hype can kind of get a little ahead of itself, and sometimes you were on a team after Eli left. Michael Spurlock was supposed to take over.
Yeah.
And Michael's a great guy, but he struggled that year when he kind of had high hopes through spring and through fall camp. What kind of happened there?
Well, I mean, Michael was just. I mean, I'll be the first one to say I think Cutcliffe did a a poor job of getting his quarterbacks ready. I think that every opportunity he got to give Eli extra reps, he did. And I don't think that I think he did a poor job of doing that. That's the biggest criticism I have for Cutcliffe in regards to that situation was, you have to prepare your players for the next year when you can. And Michael had zero experience really. So that was that situation. You just deer in the headlights, just a great athlete, but sometimes quarterback's just not the position for everybody.
Yeah, and that 2004 Memphis game, what was that like from your perspective?
I mean, frustrating, but that's just how it works sometimes. I mean, again, I wish he would have had some more opportunities to get kind of more reps underneath him, to have Eli kind of like calm him down and just kind of encourage him. But that's not what happened, and I think there were some games where he could have played a lot more. But when you throw somebody in there for the first game and they're deer in the headlights, it's hard to calm someone down at that point, especially knowing that you've got people behind you, that might take your position. So that's just a difficult situation for somebody to come into. But yeah, it was just frustrating. It was just you just knew that you have somebody with all the talent in the world, which look, he went on to play the NFL for 7-8 years, special teams and defensive back. There's no lack of talent there. It was just quarterback's a difficult position.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, do you think that Eli was, in my opinion, the greatest quarterback to play at Ole Miss? Hey, you clicked in. We got you back. Do you think it was a pressure on David Cutcliffe because of the name on the back of the jersey to almost overplay?
100%.
Yeah.
Well, 100%. Plus, he was fighting for a Heisman Trophy.
Mm-hmm.
So, I understand the why you would continue to play him in situations where you're trying to pad the stats. But if I was a coach, I would always try to get my players out and fast, get out as far as they can. And if there's a opportunity that I know for the next year that I can prepare my players for, you're going to do that, especially when it's a quarterback. But that's not what happened. And I definitely feel like, Cutcliffe really wanted to try to give him every opportunity he could to win the Heisman. And I don't blame him for that either.
Yeah. I mean, that 2003 team was incredibly special. We had no idea that 2004 was going to happen the way it did. It just kind of almost like quicksand or snowballed a little bit.
Well, it just shows you that even 15 years ago, 20 years ago, it's a quarterback-driven league, period. Like you look at the talent that we had on that team, 2004. But if you do not have a quarterback, which I'm not saying Spurlock and Flatt and Lane weren't really good quarterbacks. Unfortunately, they got put in a situation where, it was hard for them to gel with the team. So, the way that they did it was, the three-headed monster. So when you have those quarterbacks and you don't have a game where it really gels, it makes it really difficult to not have a quarterback that is your team leader that can really just manage the game, making great plays. And I'll tell you, our run game really, if you look at it, Ronald McClendon, when he went out after with his suspension, I think if he wouldn't have got out with the suspension, we would have won out 2003. And then again, if you don't have just a power running back to really be able to complement your quarterback, and I think that was our biggest Achilles heel for 2004 was that we didn't have a run game that could really take the load off our quarterbacks. And I think next year our running back committee is going to be strong. They looked really good in the spring game. And so I'm excited to see that. And I think that's really going to help, whoever the quarterback is.
Yeah, that's the main difference I see between 2004 and coming into this class is whoever wins this job is going to have that running back, because Zach Evans has probably more talent than any running back that has been on campus in my lifetime. Now, it's one thing to be talented, it's another thing to be good, and he has to kind of do that. But on paper, I mean, he should be where he needs to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're going to have running back by committee. I mean, they looked really good, and I think that they all kind of play into that offense. They all have their own little talents. I mean, it's not like you have three scat backs back there that are all do one thing well. They all kind of just do really well at what they do. Some power, some speed, some quickness, out of the backfield. I think it's going to be a really nice combination.
It should be a lot good. Anyway, thank you very much, Bill, for doing this. And thank you for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. Tomorrow we will talk about the Ole Miss baseball weekend. It happened again. So now make your second listen Locked On SEC. Get all of your daily SEC news in less than 30 minutes with SEC expert Chris Gordy. It's free and available wherever you get your podcast. Bill, thank you very much for coming on. We have to do this again and get ready for the season. And I'm getting fired up because I think we're going to hit that 1,000 mark and we're going to have the live show this year, man.
Sweet. I look forward to it.
All right. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. Thank you. Peace.
Sorry for the intruders.